Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And imagine being told at 8 years old that you'll need insulin for the rest of your life and then spending decades fighting for it. Today I'm talking with my guest Ty from Texas, who's lived through type 1 diabetes, organ transplants, and life-changing medical challenges. We'll get to his inspiring story in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. And while you're at aftersugarclub.com, why not take the cravings quiz? I created this cravings quiz specifically to help you start thinking more deeply about what triggers your cravings. And when you do this quiz, you'll get your personalized score as well as my practical tips to help you take your first step to get rid of cravings. Those free resources are at aftersugarclub.com. And also, come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration, so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. All right, so let's get to my chat with Ty. So today I'm here with Ty, who's in Texas. And Ty, can you tell us a little bit about your background with food and sugar and your health?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you. I'm glad to be here. As a diabetic, I was a juvenile type 1 diabetic at the age of 8, and that was back in the 70s. And, as you know, technology has come so far, but I was one of the early ones that was tested and put on a chemotherapy insulin pump back in the 70s. It was one of the pumps that they were working on back then. So kind of as research, I've been able to kind of see the stages of the insulin pump for years and years. And so being a diabetic, I mean, that was, no one in my family had ever had diabetes. So it was definitely a new thing for us. Right. And so we had to learn a lot back then. And again, as a juvenile diabetic, I'm taking insulin shots at 8, I just it was brittle diabetes, just such brittle diabetes. And so finally getting on the insulin pump, I went through several insulin pumps. Then to fast forward over the years, changing different pumps, technology changed, the pumps got smaller. The first insulin pump, you'll get a kick out of this. The first insulin pump was 1 pound 9 ounces.
Wow.
So it was huge. It was like a brick on the side, but I didn't slow down. It didn't let me, I still treated, my parents still didn't treat me any different than the rest of my siblings, and just said, hey, figure it out, let's go. We're gonna get through this. And then in 1999, my kidney started to fail. And then I was, and kind of found out I had to have a transplant. And so, but my doctor said, you have such brittle diabetes. I don't know, a transplant may not be the right thing right now for you, but there is a team out of Baltimore, Maryland, that's doing research on a dual transplant. and been successful having these dual kidney pancreas transplants. And so in '99, I was able to receive a lot of stuff went on there, obviously with testing and my mom, who was going to donate her kidney, I got my
Yeah.
mother's kidney. We all went up for testing, and then I went through and had a 16-hour surgery of I had my mother, myself, and then obviously a deceased donor's pancreas that I received, and that was beautiful over the year. I mean, the first year was really challenging, and I always told people I will not. Please don't ask anybody to talk to me about whether I want to do a dual transplant, because right now it's really hard.
Hmm.
And just all the anti-rejection meds. I mean, when I came out of the hospital, I was taking close to 60 pills a day.
Well,
And it was just your body, as you can only imagine, just trying to absorb all these meds. And so, Matt, keep going. I was able to get through that, and to think about this for a second. As diabetics, I love talking about this because I went from having diabetes all those years, and then when I received the pancreas, I didn't have diabetes anymore.
hmm.
And so it was really my body. I didn't realize how bad I felt as a diabetic sometimes because of the way over the years. But then over the next couple of years, as my body had the pancreas, it was amazing of how well my body kind of started adjusting, and so to have that was really cool. I had a pancreas for 12 years, so my pancreas rejected 12 years later.
Okay.
And then 20 years later, my kidney failed again.
Huh.
So in 2020 and 2019, I started going through kidney failure again. And and my sister was lined up to be a match, so that was good. I got put on dialysis this time. And I'll tell you, I always tell people dialysis is really hard. And I always say, if you know somebody going through dialysis, just pray for them, because that's a really challenging time. And
Mm.
and I just I got through that. My sister was lined up, and then right at the last minute, I wasn't my. They found out my sister's kidney wasn't going to be able to work, and so we started looking at different options, going through, and I never stopped working. That was I needed something to keep my mind. And so I would go to dialysis from 4 to 9 in the morning, and then I would 3 days a week, and then I would go to work.
Wow.
Luckily, I have my own company, and and my employees never knew that I was even going through it. So I just was one of those that just, let me deal with it kind of thing, and I pushed through. And so, got through that. And then we went through the process to try to find another kidney. And my wife said, "Hey, I'm not the same blood type, but I want to go in and see if we could do the, one of the swaps, right? Where she could donate, and then I could receive someone's match me." Well, she calls me, and she said, she was crying. She said, "God changed my blood type or something." And I was like, "What?" About? She says, "I'm a perfect match."
Wow.
So I received my wife's kidney 8 months later, 8 weeks later, and so here we are. And
Wow.
it's been an amazing run. So sorry, I was trying to get all that in a quick little synopsis there, but yeah, that's kind of been over the years. That's kind of been my run.
Wow. That's powerful. Wow. You've lived through a lot.
Yes, ma'am, I have, and it's it's been. I always try to encourage people that it's a lot, but every day we deal with stuff, right? I mean,
True.
life is hard. I mean, the world we live in today, and so I nowadays what I've really started doing is just trying to encourage people to push through, adversity. So I'm trying to take my situation and try to help others through that.
Wow, that's very inspiring. And can I ask you to explain to the listeners what type 1 diabetes actually is?
Absolutely. Um, Type 1 diabetes is an insulin dependent diabetes, right? So there's a type 1 and there's a type 2, but type 1 is the diabetic as a diabetic, you basically have lost function of your pancreas uh, to the point where you need to inject insulin. So you are dependent on supplying your own insulin at that point. Whereas as a type two, it can be controlled a lot of times through truly just diet, right? Which is we talk about how powerful food is, right? But you can control it, and type one can really be controlled through food in a lot of ways. But you still
Mhm.
have to take some insulin to because your pancreas is no longer producing that.
Okay. All right. So is it an autoimmune
It
condition?
is. It is
Okay.
absolutely.
So the pancreas in type 1 is not producing any insulin, right?
That's right.
And so even if you have a diet that doesn't require a large production of insulin, right? And you keep all your sugars low and the carbs low, you would still need to have some kind of external insulin. Like, what is it, an injection
Injection.
or what?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. It's an injection, and there's different types of levels of type one too within. Um, and in my case, I was listed as a brittle diabetic. So I mean, you're right. I mean, any little bit of carbs would my blood sugars would go up, and so I was always trying to carb read what I was putting in my mouth so that I could uh, adequately inject the insulin needed. And it got to a point where I was taking 6 and 7 shots a day, which was really challenging as a young kid.
Yeah.
And that's why I was listed as a brittle diabetic at that time.
Oh, that's what brittle means. And why were you needing 6 or 7 shots a day? What was requiring those
The
shots?
blood sugar, obviously we have a level of blood sugar that we need to stay within, right? For as a non-diabetic, your body will produce the insulin needed as your as food intake. Um, and that keeps your blood sugar at a steady level. And so, as we talked about the insulin being having to put the insulin in, I needed to keep my blood sugar within that range. So we were constantly trying to keep my blood sugar at the range. And so you got to be careful that it's going too low and also, um, rate going too high. So you have kind of a range that you need to be in. And typically, depending on the person, so I don't want to say this for everybody, my range was between 80 and 110
Wait,
is
can you
where they
repeat
wanted me.
those numbers?
Yes, ma'am. My range was between 80 and like 110. But
Okay.
like I was saying, a lot of people have different ranges depending on their level of diabetes.
Okay. All right. And so are you saying that you needed insulin injections 5 or 6 times a day because you were eating 5 or 6 times a day, or it was independent of how often you ate?
No, it wasn't that I was eating. It just your body sometimes just needs more insulin. And so it was just and again, that's where that brittle came in, or sometimes a shot or two, because you take it back then. I would take a slow acting and a fast acting insulin, and then trying to manage how much slow acting and how much fast acting. Sometimes if we put in the slow, it just trying to find that balance, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes your blood sugar would start to shoot up because you didn't have the right amount of insulin, so we have to take another
Right.
maybe fast acting insulin to bring it down, or so it was always trying. It was a juggling act, really, trying to keep up with uh, I guess just to balance and to control that diabetes and that blood sugar level.
Right. And thank goodness, we have access to that type of insulin. Did you know it was a
Oh wow.
Canadian that discovered insulin like that?
Yes, that's awesome. Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
thank God for that, right? Yes.
Right. Because what did
Uh,
people do before when they had type 1 diabetes? I guess they didn't make it. They didn't survive
that's
it.
right. I mean, diabetes. Way back when. I mean, diabetes was a fatal disease, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people Um, a lot of people died because just didn't have not having the right medication and the right uh, medical technology that we have today to be able to get through it. And what's interesting though is being a diabetic in the '70s and now being a diabetic now. The medical technology is amazing. Now I can look right here on my phone. I can tell you exactly where my blood sugar is. I can tell you what the last 24 hours or 48 hours, what it looks like.
Hmm.
Um, it's abs, and then I went back on the insulin pump after my pancreas had rejected, and and now the insulin pumps are so tiny, you know. So it's really neat to be able to say, to see all the changes. I mean, I used to check my blood sugar through, you know, kind of pricking the finger, doing the blood test, urine test, all these different things that
Yeah.
that really were just kind of in the ranges, not so real accurate. Blood sugar nowadays, they've got this down to a science where it's so accurate,
Amazing.
and I
Yeah,
thank God for that because it's awesome.
totally. And you have one of those CGMs like punched into your arm, right?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am. I have one on the back of my arm here. Um, and again, it's just not only do I have it on my phone, my wife has it on hers. So just in case I'm traveling or I'm somewhere and she can see and she'll call me and go, "Hey, just be watching it. Your blood sugar's going down," right? So
Wow.
um, it's amazing the technology that's out there.
It is. It is amazing. And
Yeah.
so, is there a connection between your type 1 diabetes and the fact that you had kidney failure?
Yeah, I think yes, absolutely. And because of the brittle diabetes and the blood sugars over the years of out of control diabetes, that's what caused my kidney failure.
Okay.
Um, and so yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, to be honest, other than the diabetes, I've been a healthy person my whole life. There's, knock on wood, that's been a I've been I've been a healthy person. It's the diabetes, and I try to encourage diabetics that diabetes is a very controllable disease, and you can live a very uh, happy and fortunate life with diabetes. You just have
Yeah.
to manage it, just like we
Yeah.
do with everything else, with our food and with our, everything, right?
Exactly.
It's a manageable disease, but it's also it's one of those diseases that I talk about too. That it's hard. You don't look at somebody and go, "Oh, they're diabetic,"
True.
but there is a lot of things going on in that particular person's body that diabetes is really affecting all your different organs and with blood sugar heights and lows. Sometimes diabetics are their blood sugar gets real low and it's hard to your process of thinking is hard. So there's a lot of things as a diabetic that are really challenging on a day-to-day life that people never can't see. It's not a
Mhm.
physical challenge that we deal with. It's something that it's just, people don't ever see it, but
Yeah.
it's a really hard disease, but it's also very manageable.
Yeah, that I get that. And you were only 8 when you were diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. What did the health professionals tell you or your parents about your diet? Did they ask you to change your diet in any way?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, that was one of the things back then. I mean, I had to completely change my diet, but as an early diabetic in the 70s, this was part of the challenge. We had to eat a certain amount of food at a certain time, 3 times a day. And they were very, and it was because back then you took shots at certain times. And so once you took the insulin, you had to eat food because that insulin was about to go into effect. So you needed the food, right, to absorb. So you ate certain meals 3 times a day, and then you would also have snacks, whether that be a piece of fruit or something that. But you had snack. They wanted you to eat snacks, and all that was to help keep your blood sugar level.
And how did that keep your blood sugar level? Because it feels to me like it would keep spiking your blood sugar.
Well, it would, but also with that slow acting insulin, it's keeping it down. So if you don't eat to keep it up, it's going to also the long lasting insulin would be the insulin that would kind of help me throughout the day because stacking is like for immediate food.
Hmm.
I would take a slow acting that would be out through the day. And if you didn't keep some kind of snack, the long lasting insulin would start to go to a lower level.
So it feels like
So
it's kind of the opposite to how the body naturally works, which is that insulin is produced after you eat. For
yeah,
you, why were they giving you insulin before you ate?
yeah, we would have to take our shots at the time. It was like 20 minutes before our meal. We would have to take shots because it took time to get through into your system.
Okay, so it didn't start acting straight away. You would take it, and then 20 minutes later you would eat something, and then the insulin would kick in to bring your blood sugar level down again.
Yeah,
Is that right?
to whatever to whatever what I was eating, so that the carbs or whatever that was involved in that.
Yeah. Now,
So yeah,
did any of the health professionals, ask you to eat fewer carbs? I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar.
you know, and that's something we talk about a lot. Nowadays, yes. I mean, I hear that all the time, and that's something that, like me, I don't eat that because it helps my blood sugars so much more. But back then, carbs, you didn't hear a whole lot about carbs back then, right?
Right. True.
And it just wasn't part of the topics of food back then. Now you hear so much more
Yes.
about it, but in the '70s, no, I have to say no, it was not about carbs.
And that was just not something that the health professionals talked about, even though the body would have reacted the exact same way in the 70s as it does today, right?
That's
So
right.
human biology hasn't changed, but what diabetics are being told to eat or recommended to eat has changed a lot.
That's correct. For sure. Yes, ma'am. That's I mean,
Yeah.
again, we my mother and I talk about that a lot because she was obviously my caretaker back then, but she's like, yeah, carbs were never, it was all about just, now we talked about fructose and stuff, sugars out of other foods, but a lot of it was mainly just sugar. Sugar was really the topic of as far from a diet standpoint.
What was it about sugar that the health professionals told you?
Just, I mean, the sugar was, it would always say always raises your blood sugar, right? But nowadays looking back, we're talking about. I mean, we didn't talk about as much as the carbs that would actually shoot your sugar up as well, but it was more about just true sugar. I mean, where I couldn't, but it was really interesting to me just looking at the way the diet was. The teachings were back then
Mm-hmm.
to now, because it, as you mentioned, it's completely has changed over the years, and our body hasn't. But
Exactly.
but the way that medical technology has come a long way with the diet and diabetes is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank goodness for that as well. So not only
Absolutely.
have we discovered how to treat diabetes, we've also discovered how to reverse it for type 2, but it's not possible to reverse it for type 1, is that right?
That is correct. There's you can't reverse it on type one, but I will say, it's interesting too, about food is now food is more talked about as at my endocrinologist and my, than probably ever in my life, because now they talk about what are we putting in our bodies and how does our bodies absorb it because of our insulin has to come through. So yeah, food as a type one now, food is talked about every time I'm on the in front of the doctors, and really from the whole transplant team. From my, I have a team uh, of specialists that have followed me through these years, but every one of them talk about the food intake.
Right. And so can you give us an example of what you eat in a typical day or week as a type 1 diabetic?
Well, it's interesting. I don't eat white breads, rice, anything of that, and really what I'm a very high protein diet. I do focus on my protein, but I mean, I will eat. Like last night, I had I'll do a side salad. I'll do salads. I do a lot of types of salads, but also got to we try to stay more on our just more natural foods as much as we can. Obviously, I've got a 14-year-old home that plays sports, and we're running all over the place at late nights, and so sometimes it gets really challenging, right? Because of, I
Sure.
mean, it's life is going on, and I can tell you, trying to eat healthy as a diabetic is not convenient in the world
Yeah.
we live in today,
Uh-huh.
as you know. I mean, it's just so I've learned that what certain places I can get a grilled chicken,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll get some type of sandwich and take the bread off. Uh, but I try to, as much as I can, we talk a lot about processed foods, staying away from that as much as we possibly can. So really, that's what I mean. It just, um, food has become very focused as far as what I put in my, but I realize it's not, I don't eat near what I used to ever think I needed to eat.
Okay.
I've minimized my quantities of food.
Oh, how come?
Uh,
Is that because of the protein?
well, I think protein, but also, I mean, I think it may have to do with my, as I get older, I don't feel like I need as much.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I feel just cutting out the breads and the white any kind of flour. It's been amazing to me how much better I have felt over the years from inflammation, not just from that, but inflammation in my wrists and things that have really helped there. But I mean, I do the best that we can, and I try to, we do the farmers market when, we try to stay with some of the local foods. Um, so it's an ongoing, it is something you've got to put time into. But as we talk about all the time, I mean, I can't think of too many more things that are more important than what we're putting in our bodies, right? So we do have to take time and really focus on what we're putting in our body, especially as diabetics,
Oh,
as
totally.
anybody. But
Yeah, and it seems to me the way that you eat is a good way to eat, whether or not you're diabetic.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, to me, I think it would be, and that's what I talk with my daughters about, and I talk to, we talk a lot with that. But I haven't always been that way. I was one of these that kind of tried to keep hitting the wall, like I think very similar to your story, where we just kept trying to do things I knew wasn't right, but I mean, I was hungry, so I would stop and eat a sandwich with, or a hamburger or whatever, right? And
Hmm.
my body just wouldn't. And over the years, I realized I just can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I was the same, not with diabetes, but with my digestion. And in a certain way, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. No, I say that sometimes. What I've been through has been very challenging, but it's also, you know, I've learned so much through it that I think it's helping me now be a better parent because I can help with, and then it just helps me as far as my diet goes because it's forced me to. It's not an option anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think some of us need that kind of need to be forced.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And
Mm.
we all should, like you said, we all should be doing it. If we really looked at what it was doing to our bodies, it should all be forced. But anyway, yeah, no, it's like I said, it's been a blessing that in disguise that I'm doing that and having to eat better because I definitely feel it.
Yeah, and I think your mindset around food and your life has changed as well with this.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean that's and really I love talking about that, the power of our mind, right? And again, something I never really thought about, but how powerful, you know, um, our mind is. In fact, I mean, I was talking with a group yesterday about it. 75% of our successes in life and work come from the way our attitude and the way we think.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
You know,
And, despite adversity, and you've gone through a lot of tough stuff, and yet, how did you keep your mindset kind of in a healthy place?
and I was asked that several years ago when I started putting together because I wanted to go out and help people through it, right, kind of what we were talking about earlier. And I have a three-step process that I've kind of come up with that I would go through when I would, I didn't realize it at the time, but we would go back and kind of dissect that situation and the times. And the three steps that I would go through is step one is grow or die. I talk about that. Number one, what we're gonna what I call the no option mindset is one, we're gonna either grow or die, right? And when I say grow or die, die means to death of a dream, of passion, um, of your purpose. You know, are we gonna get better, or are we just gonna stay? Let ourselves go, right? And then the number two would be like hope or despair, and that's how we think, right? Because again, we're going back to our environment. Are we going to be positive thinkers, or through these challenges, do we talk about how bad everything is, or
Hmm.
do we find the one positive thing and say, you know what, this was a good deal today. I've got some good results today. I'm going to get through that. And then number three is humor drama. Humor or drama is how we think, right? So it's it's really or how we talk. I'm sorry, humor drama is how we talk. So how we're talking to others is and all that goes back to our mind. So grow or die is what we do. Hope or despair is how we think, and then humor drama is how we talk.
Uh-huh.
And then all three of those is our mind, right? When we're doing those things, our mind follows, right? Because we're if we stay positive through it, that's really what would get me through it. Is just I would find the positive things, find if it was a bad day, find the one thing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And that
uh,
that that is amazing and difficult to put into practice when you're in the depths.
yes, very much so, very much so. And the other thing to me, sometimes I would look at my why. I always say, why am I fighting? And I had two daughters that was my why, my wife, Crystal. I had a family that when I would say, well, and there were days I thought, man, I can't do this anymore.
Hmm.
I just can't go. But I would focus on my why, and then I would go back into this. Or am I going? Okay, how do I get better today?
Hmm.
Or I would think, quit thinking of the negative and think of the positive. And then if I was having conversation, I was very intentional to be positive.
Yeah. Yes. And it only takes kind of one positive thing. You don't have to see everything positive in all aspects of your life because
Right.
that is like turns into toxic positivity. But
That's right.
I think it's great advice to at least find that tiny sliver of a silver lining.
That's right. That's right. And envision where you want to be, right? And envision the healthy side of it. Envision like you talked about people that just make them change in their minds to change a habit. Like we talked about changing the habit the way I was eating. Part of it was I just realized how I would feel. I would go back to those days and go, do I really want to feel like that
Yeah,
still? I mean, really kind of think through why you're doing it, or what you don't want to be, right? Where you don't want to be at. And so
absolutely.
those
I
are things
think
that would push me through.
totally. And one of the most important questions that I encourage people to ask themselves is how do I want to feel and how do I want to live?
Mhm.
Way more than what do I want to eat at this moment in time.
Right.
Um, but it feels like, and I deal with people who have cravings, and it feels like when you're in a craving or, when you're in a difficult place, all you can focus on is that immediate gratification.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going back to my second transplant or my first transplant with the dual transplant. I was given a 50-50 survival rate. I mean, they said there's a 50-50 shot you'll come out of this, right? And so, but the option, the other side of that was with the quality of life. If I didn't do it, this is what I was going to feel like, and I didn't want to be there. I couldn't take care of my daughter's feeling like that anyway. Plus, it was only going to get worse.
Hmm.
So that's why I talk about, in my case, I talk my three steps is the no option mindset, the no options. Um, because people say, well, where do you get the no options? Because really, when I talk through my story, I didn't have I was going to either, like I said, I mean, I'm 50-50 shot. I didn't have an option. I wanted to get better so that I could take care of my girls, my family, and be here for them.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you got to kind of say, yeah, in the moment it's hard, but you got to put yourself, you got to get your mind thinking, because I always talk about this after I was the beautiful thing of this that was after my transplant, my first transplant, I was able to get married. I was able to open a business. I was able to adopt my second daughter, and and I tell people through adversity, if on the other side has been a beautiful thing. And so, if we can get through this moment, on the other side is some amazing things, and that's what I encourage people every day. Is it's tough right now, but what can we do? Think of the things that we can get through this situation. Because when we start thinking positive, and we start talking positive, and we start doing positive things, our mind will follow.
Yeah, very inspiring. And I totally agree, not just intellectually, but that's been my personal experience as well.
Good.
And I
That's
think
awesome.
people listening will be inspired, not just by your story, but by how you dealt with your reality.
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't look at myself as being anything that no. There's so many great stories out there. In fact, I talk to people that have gone through adversity. So, because I try to help people, I'll interview people as well that's gone through adversity, so everybody can hear. It's not just about my adversity. Everybody has adversity. It don't matter who we're talking to. Somebody's dealing with something.
Totally.
Whether your car wouldn't start this morning on the way to work, or whether you woke up feeling bad, or whatever that looks like. There's
Yeah.
adversity every day, but really these steps, in my mind, no matter what level of adversity we're dealing with, just think about it.
Yeah.
Right on my mirror in my bathroom, I have these three steps, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just a quick little reminder that when I have that bad day, that I need to think through those, right? So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I encourage and I feel like I have been through a lot, but there's a lot of people that are going through a lot more than I've ever considered. And my hope is that just through encouraging people that they can get through it, um, you know, and just and like I said, I talk to people, call me, people text me, whatever, or get on my website and send me questions. But I'll talk through if it's one or hundreds, to try to help them. I mean, just to try to help. I was on a call with a family that they called because their son was in the ICU, had been in an accident, and they were deciding whether they wanted to donate their organs.
Well,
And so I was able to talk through that with them just recently about how to, through a horrible situation, the gift of organ donation is an amazing gift, and to be able to and in such a bad situation, to be able to just give that small gift, it's been amazing. Um, and that's what I try to encourage even in that space. Uh, how to help others.
fantastic. Amazing. Well, thank you, Ty, for telling your story and for being such a positive influence.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm just glad to be here. Every day's a bonus day to me, right? I mean, I just like I
Absolutely.
tell people all the time. Every day I look up and put my foot on the ground, I'm just very thankful to be here. So, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. What an inspiring interview with Ty. And I want to highlight something really important from Ty's story, which is that type 1 diabetes isn't about willpower or food choices. It's an autoimmune condition where the pancreas can't produce insulin anymore. And this means that people have to rely on injected or pumped insulin just to stay alive. And listening to Ty reminds us how incredible the human body is, and how incredible modern medicine is, and just how much invisible effort people with type 1 diabetes make every single day. And so many of us are trying to manage our health and our cravings and our energy without real guidance or support. And that's exactly why I created my 12-week program, the Freedom from Cravings Formula. Because I created this program specifically to help you go deeper into your relationship with food, especially sugar, and also into your relationship with yourself so that you can finally get rid of cravings, slim down, and feel more in control around food. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life when you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can talk directly to me on a free clarity call at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on Program at the top. You'll also find the link with the show notes together with this episode. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak to you soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.